Welcome back to Monster in My Closet, the podcast where we shine a light on the professional world's darker corners. I'm Anil Saxena, joined by my co-host, the founder of Medusas, Morgan Hunter. Each episode, we tackle the fears and faux pas that haunt our work lives, with insights, interviews, and a dash of humor, some stupid analogies, and probably swearing. So if you've ever felt like you're navigating a workplace labyrinth, a never-ending approval process, an evil hall of mirrors, or a constantly ending quarter, you're in the right place. Let's confront those monsters together. Are you ready? Let's begin. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Monster in My Closet. So, Morgan, today, are we scared or scary?
We're being pretty scary this week.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like we needed more scary. I feel like that's something every once in a while. It's good to have a little scary in your life.
Better to be the monster.
That's right. As I think I want to try to make a trend, sometimes it's better to control the chainsaw than to be controlled by the chainsaw. Right? As our friend Leather Face, Leather Pants, Leather Man. I don't know. I was too scared to see the movie, but he did have a chainsaw. In today's episode of Monster in My Closet, we explore the dark side of goal setting, where the relentless chase for success can lead to burnout, overlooked achievements, and ethical pitfalls. Relax in your hammock of despair and listen as we collectively destroy the Golem of Goals. So 3 big things we want to talk about today. First, the dark side of goal setting. We're going to explore how that hyper-focus on goals can lead to burnout and missed small wins and bad acting. Second, we want to talk a little bit about process versus outcome. So discuss the importance of enjoying the journey and not just the destination. And finally, we want to talk about how we can really help to create increased morale around goal setting so that we really help our teams excel. So, Morgan, why did we want to talk about this today?
Well, there's a couple things that made me really want to talk about this. I personally sometimes I want to achieve things. I want to get the thing done. I'm very goal oriented as a person. More often than not, I get burned by that actually, because I'm so focused on the goal that I don't enjoy any part of the process, or I miss obvious things that are right in front of me because I'm so focused on the goal. Sometimes I get like in my head, like if I have a little setback, I get really in my head about it, and it actually hampers my performance. And it really just got me thinking, what are goals for, right? And how can we architect those goals in a way that drives outcomes without demoralizing the people attempting to achieve those?
Yeah. When an organization is hyper-focused on the end goal, what have you found is kind of happening? What does the research tell us about how that impacts an organization?
There's a few things. So one of the pieces of research I looked at that said that if you have competing goals, so let's say you have a quantity goal and you have a quality goal, that people will default to the quantity goal at the expense of the quality goal, because the quantity goal is generally easier to achieve. So I thought that was really interesting when you think of, we often talk about quality in organizations, and we want to have a focus on quality. And I just thought, I've never looked at it like that. Is there another goal in the organization that's actually making our quality worse because it's distracting our focus from the quality issue at hand? The other thing rigorous goals can do within an organization is increase risk-taking behavior. And we will include the research in the show notes. But people with aggressive goals take more risk. in order to achieve those goals. And it's even more compounded when those goals are associated with monetary rewards, obviously, right? We have seen that. So the third thing, kind of downside of goals, is the unintended behaviors and bad behaviors because the goals are too aggressive or difficult to obtain. And I'm sure we can both share some anecdotes on that. But those are kind of the three things where I see in corporations that have significant negative impact.
Yeah, this is such an interesting topic too, because goals are important, right? You got to have a thing that you're kind of reaching for, or you're striving towards, or people can coalesce around. But sometimes goals can limit thinking just to the goal, right? Like people might ignore other things that might be just as important. And there is a short termness that kind of occurs when we're all kind of hyper focused on this idea of a goal. And it can lead to some really bad behavior, unethical things. It can lead to ignoring long-term issues. When we were prepping for this, I remember I was kind of flinching from my PTSD from this goal. Early in my career, I was part of an organization that had a goal to get millions of new customers, right? Like that was they coalesced the whole organization around getting those new customers. And we blew that number out of the water, right? And bent all the rules to get there. We really pushed to get there. And when we got those customers and we, put the banner across the boat and said, mission accomplished. For those of you that are unaware, I am referring to George H.W. Bush and his failure, but that's another story. So when we put that banner up, almost immediately what happened was those customers that we fought so hard to get in actually turned out to be horrible customers. They didn't pay their bill. They didn't use the product in the way that we had thought or the way that it was intended. And we lost a crapload of money. And it actually led to layoffs. But the person and people that did not get laid off were the ones that set the goal. So I think it's important, right? Right? That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
You see that over and over, right? So, in previous organizations I've worked for, there's been like big pushes for massive increases in certifications, right? Not just like incremental, but massive increases. And so you go through again, you organize the whole company around it and you push for those certifications. And the partners, bless them, they go out there and they get the certifications. Because it was never part of their plan to achieve those certifications, they're only doing it under threat of penalty. We had a massive increase in certifications followed by exactly 1 year later, a massive drop off in certifications, right? Yeah. So it was a false result. Like it was never a sustainable result. So I would say that was a poor goal, right? In its design, in its follow through, everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's that notion of when reaching the goal actually undermines the culture of the organization. Like we don't think about, and sometimes we just don't do a good enough job of making that occur. We do know though that goals are a good thing, right? Like we do need to have goals.
Sure.
So how do we find joy in the process rather than the outcome? What are some of the things that we could suggest to people that they do to think about how to make it a little bit more enjoyable to get there?
I don't like big bang goals, where it's a lot of effort and in next year you'll be there kind of thing. So it's just, heads down. I like to have kind of like incremental goals along the way so we can explore progress, etc. But I also think that you should always marry a big aggressive goal with some other goal that is going to keep this goal in check, if you
Yeah.
will. So if we go back to the quality and quantity debate, right? If you have a quantity goal, you should also have a quality goal in place, and that should be carefully monitored along the way. I also think that it needs to be clear to people which, if you have multiple goals, which one's the most important.
Right.
Because if you don't tell people what that is, they will decide for themselves which one is more important, because it's kind of hard to do many goals at once, right? I think also there needs to be more of milestones just in general with people on big projects, even if it's not directly related to the goal. So let's say in order to meet a goal, you have to do all this foundational work. I think we should celebrate the completion of the foundational work. This is
Yeah.
a major milestone. Without this next step would not be possible. Let's pause, reflect. Let's elevate that to senior leadership and let them know that the foundation has been built, etc. Because otherwise we lose track of the work that happens, the good work that happens along the way to the goal.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think oftentimes if we don't make sure that we're checking in and celebrating those wins, it gets lost. And there becomes pressure to complete the goal. And we miss the idea that, hey, we've actually done a lot of work already. And we've actually made this foundation that we're going to be able to use on a regular basis moving forward. And so it's really important to make sure that you're doing that. I think the other two that I would add to what you're saying is that I think it's really important to check in, to check for learnings, right? Like to really make sure that you're working with folks to say, hey, what have we learned so far? What have we done so far that's different, that's new, that we can reuse, that we can change other processes within the organization. And then I think the other thing that we have to do is monitor the progress of the goal really rigorously as leaders and look to see, is there something that we might need to shift in order to not miss the goal, or to not tank all the work that we're trying to do. I think sometimes there's this connection, or we glom on to, like, well, you got to get a million new customers, and it's a million or bust. But maybe the learnings that we gain along the way makes us realize that, well, actually we don't need a million. Maybe we need 500,000 that are really good customers.
Right.
So I think that's an important thing that I would make sure that we're doing as leaders.
I think that that's a good opportunity to also reflect if there's any unintended consequences happening with your goals. When
Yeah.
you do a check-in, it's like, is this playing out the way we expected it to, or is it a shit show?
Right. I mean, it's a little bit like when you're cooking something that you've never cooked before, and you want to make sure that it turns out really great. You want to taste along the way, right? It didn't turn out that way, and so you shift and you make something else.
Red gravy instead.
Yeah, I mean, it works, but I think it's important that we acknowledge that along the way. It's a little bit of why when you watch those cooking shows, the judges are always talking about, are you tasting your food? Did you taste this before you put it on the plate? Because you have to make sure that you're doing that. It's the same thing with goals. Because everything relates to food, I think. And I can you think of a time when you achieved a goal that you thought was going to be like, this is going to make a big difference, but it didn't get you the juice, didn't get you the joy that you thought it was going to?
Yeah. I built this thing with a team of people. You were on that team. It was a major project. I looked at this project as kind of a game changer for the partner ecosystem that I was serving. And it was a 2-year project. It was like nose to the grindstone, 2 years from conception to launch. I felt pretty good about it for a day. And then I kind of suddenly felt like I was the only one that cared. This thing had happened. Like, it was convenient for people that this thing was here. But my key finding was it was my goal, and it was a goal that people could appreciate, but it wasn't their goal, and therefore it was like, yeah, nice job, moving on, right? It didn't really get baked in. It didn't really get baked into the overall thing, right? So I think, my miss there was not only did it need to be my goal, but it needed to be more explicitly a goal of my leadership and the population that I was serving, in a more formal way, as opposed to, yeah, that'd be nice to have. I like put it on paper. Like, I think there should have been a little more around that. And I think, we're going to talk at the bottom of the hour about like how you can design better goals, but that one could have been designed differently.
Yeah, that's such an interesting thing, right? Like, it feels like we need to be much better at being explicit about how does this connect to the end, to making more money, to growing more market share, that kind of stuff. And it's something that I think we've talked about before in other episodes, about this notion that you have to create a line of sight between the work that you're doing and gaining or retaining customers.
Yeah.
And whatever that is for you and your organization, if you're not doing that all the time with all of the work that you're doing, then it is forgotten. No matter how magical it is forgotten. And I mean, I have a lot of examples of this, but I think the one in particular that I'll share is early in my career, I got to work for an organization that wanted to be on this really prestigious list. And it was a big deal. And 2 years before we got on this list, we had 57% attrition, and it went down to 18% by all of this work that we had done. The day that, and we put all this effort into the application and all this hard work around getting on the list. And the day the list was announced, my boss's boss got a call from the magazine editor, and they congratulated the person, and their response was, now we need to get to number 1. And I thought that getting on this list would validate the hard work that my team and the organization did. But instead, it felt like, yeah, that's nice, we're on the list, but now we need to get to number 1. And it quickly became, the effort wasn't around making the organization better or highlighting how far we had come. It's now, well, we got to get into the top 10. And it's like, whatever we got.
It's manipulating the number at that point, as opposed to invoking real change. Yeah. This is so funny because we both experienced this in a previous organization, that there was a goal for partners to get X number of certifications, whatever, go get certifications. And because partners will do exactly what you tell them to do, and I love that, by the way, they got the certifications, but we didn't tell them exactly how they needed to get those certifications, just that you needed them. And so they did this thing consistently across all partners, which was, I call it certification Sherpas, or, you're just piling on. Like, you have a designated person in your organization that has 5,000 certifications, and then no one else in the organization has any certifications. So, technically the goal has been met, but the intent of the goal could not be realized because only the one person has the certifications. So it's just, you got to think through it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of the spirit and the letter of the law, right?
It's about being explicit. Let's be explicit about the goal.
Yeah, exactly. Be explicit about it. I think it's got to be attached to that outcome that you're trying to achieve, right? It can't just, the goal can't be a standalone thing. Like, we're going to get 200,000 new certifications. We're going to get 1 million new customers. We're going to get 10,000 downloads. Like, whatever the number is, that is important in the context of what you're trying to do as an organization. Getting a bunch of new customers alone doesn't mean that you're successful. It could just mean that there's a lot of people with unfulfilled orders,
Yeah.
leaving you 1-star reviews on Yelp.
So that's interesting. Oh, I see that too. Like, if there's a real push to sell a specific product in your organization, that it starts to get attached to deals, this product, and salespeople are good at what they do. They sell the shit out of that, right? And people buy it, but because they had no intention of originally buying it, then it becomes shelfware. And there's like, oh, we have undeployed backlog, or we have shelfware, or whatever. Well, yeah, because you just sold someone something they didn't need. I mean, you're a great salesperson, but it created a downstream problem.
Yeah. And then you have the problem of downselling and all that kind of thing. And you could extrapolate that to any kind of business, right?
Yeah.
If you're gonna supersize every meal, right? You're gonna try to supersize every meal. That doesn't work for everybody. And so you have to be clear on the intention of the goal. So let's actually talk about that in our remaining time here. How can leaders balance goals and maintaining team morale? What are some approaches to ensure goals don't negatively impact morale?
So if we look at morale and beyond, just like morale, the business, your situation, whatever the case may be, I think the number one thing for me about goal setting and smart goals, honestly, don't get me started. I mean, I've never met a smart goal. It's just like, it's so formulaic. It relieves people from any critical thinking, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the piece that we need to do, is more critical thinking. So if we assert that we need a certain goal in place, there should be an entire exercise around, why is that the right goal? Like,
Yes.
what is the outcome we're trying to achieve? Why is that the right goal? And then, or not the right goal? And not only can you measure it, but is it going to drive any unintended behavior? How are we going to know if this goal has gone wrong? How are we going to know when the goal has outlived its usefulness? Right? So a goal that you have in year 1 may be a terrible goal for year 3, right? Because you're solving different business problems. So I think in all, it's not just a matter of sitting down and making a goal smart, but making the goal setting process smart, right? Applying that critical thinking to the goal itself.
Yes. And I too am not a huge fan of the acronym of SMART, but I think it's important that it does connect to something larger. And I think the thing that I would add to what you've said is, you want to be the kind of leader that encourages innovative ways to get to the goal. So we're going to make sure that our folks have the tools that they need to reach the goals, and that we're encouraging them to look for new ways, new processes, new technologies to get to the goal, and that we're defending our folks along the way while they're working towards that goal. Because oftentimes what happens is we set a goal, an aggressive goal that could be a stretch goal, but attainable. And when you're working with a senior leader, they're saying, well, we're only 30% towards the goal. We need to double down. We need to get there faster. We need to showcase these results. As a leader of an organization, or as the leader of a team, you have to showcase that goal is actually either going to take more time, or that we've had successes along the way. And you don't want to pull your team into these conversations, these kind of bullshit conversations about, like, how do we get there faster once you've already set a plan.
Yeah. I love that, because I'm with you. You set the goal, and like day 1, they're like, why aren't we there yet? Well, it's a year-long goal. I mean, like, you need to set some expectations. If you need to make a little freaking graph that says we're here, and if we keep increasing by this amount, we're going to hit the goal. So don't freak out. We're going to get there. Because that is a morale killer. And then also setting goals that are out of your control aren't actually achievable or realistic. The A and the R in the in the SMART. So many times I have gotten goals that are completely out of my power. So I'm just like relying on the goodwill of other people who could give a crap about me to help me meet my goal.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think the last thing that I would say about this notion of morale, and so this is kind of purely my opinion here, but I feel like morale is kind of a bad measure because my morale goes up and down just based on things, right? Like, what did I put too much cream in my coffee and now is my day ruined because my coffee tastes too much like half and half? It feels like it's such a arbitrary thing. And so I think maybe the target that we should be hitting or trying to make sure that we're maintaining is that everybody agrees on the benefit of reaching the goal. Like, what is this going to make better, faster, stronger? That to me, that's kind of the key, that we want to make a goal that excites people and actually makes sense in the context of the organization. And that when we are talking about it and we're talking about how we're doing towards reaching it, that we're always putting that out in front, so that even when people are not super enthralled about their day, because they had too much cream in their coffee, or they had a bad commute, or the deviled eggs were bad, or whatever, that the goal still makes sense and it's still something that is motivating to work towards.
Yeah, I mean, in summary, let's do some serious critical thinking about our goal selection. Like, use your brain. Does it make sense? Are there going to be any unintended consequences? Is this going to be demoralizing to the troops? Is it going to, ask all those questions? All of them.
So the underlying thing here today is use your brain.
The entire podcast.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So remember that we have really extensive show notes. So we're going to share all of the research and everything that we've talked about and things that we probably didn't even cover in today's episode. If you like this episode, if you like this podcast, please share it. Please rate us on whatever podcast app that you listen to, or maybe you could rate us on all of them. That would be cool. Not like I'm asking you to game the system for a goal, but read into that what you will. And please make sure to check out medusas.org. And we look forward to seeing you again next week on another episode of Monster in My Closet. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
As we wrap up another episode here at Monster in My Closet, we want to thank you, our fearless listeners, for joining us on this journey of exploring what scares us or when we're scary. Professionally, of course. Together, we've ventured deep into the workplace wilderness armed with humor, insights, and a touch of irreverence, and hopefully learned something together along the way. But our journey doesn't end here. Monster in My Closet is proud to be part of medusas.org. Medusas is a membership-driven, non-profit organization serving underrepresented groups, minorities, and individuals with disabilities who are doing business in the software-as-a-service space. We're a community created by SaaS professionals, for SaaS professionals, and even the SaaS curious. Visit medusas.org to discover how you can contribute to a movement that empowers professionals to face their workplace monsters head-on. Don't forget to subscribe, share with your colleagues, and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us shine a light on the monsters lurking in the professional closet, making our community braver, stronger, and a little bit wiser. Until next time, keep challenging the status quo, embrace the journey, and remember, no monster is too big when we face it together. Cheers.